Alice was a small-town girl, living a life so ordinary that even her wildest dreams never ventured beyond the boundaries of her quiet community. She worked as a waitress in a local diner, a place where she had become something of a fixture, known to all the regulars for her bright smile and playful spirit. Her days were a blend of routine tasks. The turning point in Alice's life came on what was supposed to be a perfect night. Scott, her boyfriend, had been planning something special, and there was an air of excitement that Alice couldn't quite put her finger on. Scott, with his confident swagger and love for gadgets, showed up at the diner on his motorcycle, his new Bluetooth glasses perched on his nose, adding an extra touch of cool to his already charming persona. He invited Alice out for a romantic dinner, something that immediately set her heart aflutter. She agreed, of course, not knowing that this night would change everything. They went to a fancy restaurant, the kind with low lighting and soft music, where the atmosphere seemed to whisper of love and promises. Scott, nervous yet determined, was about to make the evening even more special. He reached for the ring he had been hiding, preparing to propose to the woman he loved, but fate had other plans. Just as he was about to slip the ring onto Alice's finger, a worker nearby had an unfortunate accident. A nail gun, seemingly out of nowhere, misfired, and a nail shot straight into Alice's head, embedding itself deep in her skull. The shock was immediate. Alice was rushed to the hospital, where doctors quickly realized the severity of the situation. The nail was lodged deeply in her brain, and without urgent surgery, the consequences could be dire. However, the real tragedy struck when Alice and Scott were informed that she didn't have health insurance. The surgery that could save her life, or at the very least prevent her condition from worsening, would cost $150,000, a sum that neither of them could even begin to afford. Scott, who had once been so full of plans for their future, was suddenly faced with an impossible decision. How could they go forward with their wedding when Alice's life hung in the balance? Reluctantly, he told Alice that they would have to postpone the wedding, a decision that crushed her. Her parents, desperate to help, offered to contribute to the surgery's cost, but their savings were far from sufficient. Determined not to give up, Alice's parents decided to organize a fundraiser to raise the money needed for her surgery. The community rallied around them, and on the night of the event, the diner was filled with people, friends, neighbors, and even strangers who had heard about Alice's plight. Each one had their own story, many of them struggling with similar issues of untreated medical conditions due to a lack of insurance. Among them was Kesson, a man with a strange problem with his backside, and Pastor Norm, a former priest who was dealing with uncomfortable side effects from his medication. The fundraiser was a night filled with hope, but also with a harsh reality. Despite the best efforts of everyone involved, they managed to raise only $1,600, a tiny fraction of what was needed. The shortfall was a blow to Alice, who had been clinging to the hope that this event might be her salvation. Desperation set in, and just when it seemed that all hope was lost, her aunt, a veterinarian by trade, made an unorthodox offer. She would perform the surgery herself. It was a last resort, but with no other options. Alice agreed. The makeshift surgery took place under less than ideal conditions. As her aunt prepared to remove the nail, Alice's fear and anxiety reached a peak. She began to panic, convinced that her brain was leaking and that she was losing her mind. Scott, witnessing her breakdown, made a heart-wrenching decision. He told Alice that he couldn't marry someone who might be losing her sanity. His words were like a dagger to her heart, and when he left, it felt like the last bit of her world had crumbled. Alice's life spiraled into depression. She was alone, abandoned by the man she loved, and stuck in a body that felt foreign to her. The nail in her head continued to wreak havoc on her behavior, causing her to act out in ways that were completely out of character. Yet, in her darkest moments, Alice found new friends who refused to leave her side. Pastor Norm and Kesson, despite their own struggles, became her pillars of support, urging her to hold on to hope even when it seemed like there was none left. One day, as she lay on the couch, flipping through channels on the TV, something caught Alice's eye. A handsome man was speaking passionately on the screen, his words full of promise and hope. He was Howard Birdwell, a young congressman who claimed that he would help anyone who came to him in need. Something about his sincerity resonated with Alice, and in that moment, she made a decision that would once again change the course of her life. She would go to Washington, D.C., and ask this man for help. It wasn't long before Alice, accompanied by Pastor Norm and Kesson, found herself in the bustling capital, far from the quiet life she had always known. The Congressional Building, with its imposing architecture and stern-faced security, was a world apart from the diner she had worked in. As they entered, Alice's troubles seemed to follow her. Security discovered a nail gun in her bag and detained her, but Kesson, always quick on his feet, managed to distract the female security guard with his charm, allowing Alice to continue her mission. They finally reached Howard's office, but their journey was far from over. Howard was in the middle of a phone call with his mother, leaving Alice to wait anxiously. As she stood in the corridor, she caught glimpses of the political machinations at play. P. Hendrickson, a former astronaut turned politician, passing by, and a woman entering Howard's office to discuss a plan to build a military base on the moon. The more she saw, the more out of place Alice felt. Yet she was determined not to let these obstacles deter her. When Howard finally emerged, Alice seized the moment. She poured out her story, telling him about the nail in her head, her financial struggles, and the hopelessness that had driven her to seek his help. Howard listened, moved by her plight, but he was also realistic about his limitations. As a young congressman, he didn't have the power to change the law on his own. He explained that he was bound by the orders of those above him, leaving Alice feeling disheartened. In a moment of frustration, she impulsively kissed him, a move that surprised them both. Despite the odd circumstances, something clicked between Alice and Howard. He was drawn to her unpredictability, her raw emotion, and the way she seemed to live life with an intensity that he had never known. They spent more time together, and Howard, recognizing Alice's unique appeal, decided that she could help him with his own political ambitions. He invited her to appear on television to support the lunar base project, believing that her sincerity and charm could sway public opinion. Alice, though completely unfamiliar with the project, agreed. She trusted Howard, and more importantly, she believed in his promise to help create a new law that would provide health care for those in need. As she prepared to step into the spotlight, Alice struggled to keep her emotions in check. The pressure was immense, and the nail in her head still had the power to make her act out in ways she couldn't control. But with the support of her friends, she managed to hold it together. The conference was a major event, with the Girl Scouts taking the stage first to advocate for the moon base. Their enthusiasm was palpable, and they made a compelling case for the project. Then it was Alice's turn. She stood before the cameras, her heart pounding, and delivered a speech that would resonate with everyone who heard it. She spoke about her own struggles, the pain of living with a condition that could be fixed if only she had the means, and then she pivoted to ask the government to approve the moon base project, likening it to making the moon a part of the United States. Alice's speech struck a chord with the audience. Her sincerity, her vulnerability, and her raw emotion made her message impossible to ignore. Howard, watching from the sidelines, felt a deep sense of pride and relief. He saw in Alice not just a key ally in his political career, but someone who had brought new meaning to his life. After the conference, they returned to the hotel to celebrate, and in the quiet moments that followed, Howard opened up to Alice in a way he never had with anyone else. He told her about his childhood dreams of becoming a ranger, how his mother had pushed him into politics, and how he had always felt like he was living someone else's life. In Alice, he found someone who understood what it meant to struggle against forces beyond one's control. As Alice's influence grows, so does the complexity of the situation. The film cleverly satirizes the political landscape, with Howard and Alice navigating a web of corruption, backdoor deals, and public appearances. One particularly absurd subplot involves a plan to build a military base on the moon, a project that Alice unwittingly endorses in her speeches, believing it will somehow lead to better healthcare. The climax of the movie sees Alice standing before the cameras, delivering an impassioned plea for healthcare reform while simultaneously backing the lunar base project. Her speech, though somewhat misguided, resonates with the public, and she becomes a symbol of hope for those suffering without access to medical care. However, the road to change is never easy. Alice and Howard face opposition from powerful political figures, including the manipulative Pam Hendrickson, who is determined to see the moon base project through at any cost. In a dramatic twist, Pam's ruthless tactics and Howard's own moral dilemmas threaten to derail their efforts. In the end, Alice's unwavering spirit prevails. Through a combination of sheer willpower and the strange turn of events, the healthcare bill is passed, albeit in a form that still favors political interests. Howard, who has grown to truly care for Alice, sacrifices his political career to ensure the bill's success. The film concludes with Alice and Howard reuniting, their love story a testament to the power of persistence and hope. End of the movie. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.